Am I the asshole for not letting a girl check my phone to make sure I wasn't taking pictures of her? I'm at the gym today and I'm walking towards an empty squat rack. Right in front of me is another girl doing squats. While walking up, I briefly noticed that her leggings are see-through, and when she bends down in her squats, you can easily tell she's not wearing underwear. That's not my business, that's her choice, but it made me uncomfortable to take a rack that was kind of behind her. I had been waiting my entire gym session for one of these racks to open up, and this was my last lift before leaving, so I went ahead and took it. I went through my workout as normal. After every set, I check my phone for 5 to 20 seconds. I track every single set for every single lift in a spreadsheet to note how much I lifted and for how many reps. Sometimes I need to remind myself what I did last week to make sure I'm progressing. Sometimes I'm checking the time or changing a song on Spotify. Tonight specifically, there was a very important basketball game being played, so I wanted to keep up with the score, so I used my phone a lot at the gym. I finished up my third set when the girl turns around, walks up to me with her phone up yelling, "What the F are you doing? Effing perv, stop taking pictures of me." I'm caught completely off guard, but I explained that I'm just taking notes on what I'm lifting and that I'm not paying attention to her at all. She's being extra loud so other people are looking at me, plus she's recording me, and she demands I go through my pics and videos to show her what I was recording and I delete the ones I took of her. I tried to again explain I didn't record anything of her at all. She's yelling that if I have nothing to hide, I should have no problem showing her, so I insist on going to the gym management. Once at the front, we both explain our stories. The normal gym attendee asks me if I'm willing to show her, a neutral third party, my phone. She also says if I have nothing to hide, it's not a big deal and we can squash it right now. I refuse. I have my own uncensored pics in there plus those of my girlfriend. I'm not gonna let anyone force me to show them for some BS. I do show her my spreadsheet, which shows it's been revised over 15 times in the past 50 minutes, so that proves what I was using my phone for. That was received well, but they still expected me to prove my innocence. I told them they needed to review the cameras. Apparently only the manager has access to them, so I was told he'd call me before the end of the night. My girlfriend tells me I should have just let them go through my phone because she doesn't mind, and it would have cleared this all up. But I do mind. I get that someone wouldn't want someone taking pics of them, but violating my privacy to prove I wasn't taking pics of you crosses a line for me. Later that night, the manager called. He checked the footage. He couldn't see what was on my screen, but he said it looked like I had my phone pointed towards the ground right in front of me the whole time. In his opinion, it wasn't high enough to even take a picture of her and never angled it in her direction. Apparently, I was gonna get banned from the gym if the cameras didn't absolve me. And also, I'm not the first person that has been accused before by this girl, but she legit had a creeper before, so I kinda understand where she was coming from.
Storytime about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on an all-girls trip. So a little background information, I was 14 or 15 around the time, and it was the summer of my freshman year. So within the last few weeks of my 8th grade year, one of the more popular boys asked me out, and we're gonna call him Carson. I wasn't like super popular at the school, but I was like a medium maybe. But I was raised in a super strict household, where the only phone that I pretty much had was one that was able to call 911 and my parents. And I especially was not allowed to be talking to boys. So Carson had the great idea of giving me his old phone, and throughout the summer, I would text him on there. Well, I started realizing him getting really toxic. Anytime that he would see my Snapchat location change, he would be like, "Where are you going? Why didn't you tell me you were going here?" So I started distancing myself a little bit from him. Also because our relationship was just moving way too fast. Within the first month of us dating, he was talking about wanting to marry me. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I started distancing myself from him because he became too attached and was just way too toxic. Well, I was also in a lot of clubs in school, and a few of them would require me to go on trips. Well, the one that I went on was an all-girls trip, and before I left, I texted Carson letting him know that I wouldn't have my phone all week. Well, on the last night of my trip, there was a girls and boys dance. There was like a group of boys from a different school that we were meeting up with, and I tried staying back at the cabin, but they wouldn't let me. So we started doing dances that required partners, so I was pretty much forced to dance with one of the boys. Well, when I came back home, I got 100 texts from Carson calling me a bunch of nasty names, and you can probably guess them. And somebody got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys, and Carson sent it to me and said, "We're done." So after that, I just ignored him. And then literally that night at 1 a.m., he was texting me saying, "I miss you, please come back to me," like for part 3. Part 3 about how my ex-boyfriend accused me of cheating on him on an all-girls trip. So like I said, I received over 100 messages from him. He got a picture of me dancing with one of the boys and said, "We're done." And then at 1 in the morning, he's like, "I miss you so much. Please don't leave me. Like, I've been doing so bad while you were gone." So of course I didn't accept his apology and I just blocked him on all my social media. And the next day I wake up to messages on my Instagram, my Snapchat, my Facebook. Like, who even uses that? Unless you're talking to family. Well, then Carson decides to tell everybody at my school about how I'm a lying, cheating scumbag. And now, 3 years later, no good guy from my school wants to date me. So now whenever I'm talking to a guy, I have to make sure that they're not affiliated with Carson in any way. But low-key, I had a really good glow-up, so all the hot boys want to talk to me now. And Carson's pretty much still a scumbag.
Am I the asshole for catfishing my underage sister on Tinder and humiliating her in order to teach her a lesson? Last week, I was using my younger sister's phone because mine was dead and I needed to call a friend. Dialing my friend's number, I saw a Tinder notification of some dude messaging her. Immediately, I asked her why she's on Tinder. She's 17, and she grabbed her phone back and said, "None of your business." I decided as her big brother that I wanted to have a little fun with this. I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt. Maybe she's just swiping for fun, so I didn't want to go straight to ratting her out to our parents. To test if she was just using for fun, I decided I was going to make a Tinder profile of someone else and message her to see if she responds. I asked a good friend of mine from back in college, who happens to be a male model, if he'd mind if I used his pictures and explained the situation. He thought it would be hilarious and told me to go for it. I created the account, set my age to 22, set my swipe radius to a mile, and quickly found my sister's account. Her age was set to 19. Lie, she's still in high school. So I was definitely more suspicious of her now. I super liked, and less than an hour later, she matched and messaged me. I decided to set up a date to a fancy restaurant downtown for Sunday afternoon and told her we could head to my place afterwards. She was completely receptive and said she'd meet me there. She told our parents she was hanging out with one of her track friends and spending the night at her place. After she left, I told our parents everything and showed them all of the messages. They were pissed, and I suggested we all go to the restaurant. My dad and I just went instead and saw her sitting at a table alone, all dolled up waiting for Jim. My dad went up to her and said, "Jim's not coming," and she screamed and asked what we were doing there. I told her there was no Jim and that it was effing stupid of her to try to be meeting grown men on Tinder at that age. My dad harped onto that and lectured her about lying and meeting strange men on the internet and being so willing to go back to a stranger's place. We were a bit loud, so people were starting to look at us, and my sister eventually bursted into tears and ran out. I told my friends in a group chat the situation, and they all agreed it was hysterical, except two of my female friends who said I was an asshole and cruel to her. My other friends defended me and said she needed to be taught a lesson. Now I've been wondering who's right and maybe if I went too far.
Story time about how I fell in love with my stepdad and married him. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. My mom and dad divorced when I was 14 years old. This really affected me and I really wanted to move away from my parents. My mom has a tendency to be really controlling, and my dad has always been like a really jealous dad. Like, he never let me do anything fun or even let me hang out with boys. After they got divorced, I told my parents that I wanted to go to an art school. But not just any art school, this was a boarding school. I was really eager to get away from my parents and just basically have my own life. While I was in this art school, my mom actually remarried. So this guy became my stepdad. My mom told me that she was really in love with him and that everything was perfect. They would come visit me every now and then, so I did meet him a couple of times. Finally, when I was 18, I graduated and went back home. This is where things get really complicated. My mom owned 2 salons and was never home. My stepdad worked from home and was there all day. This meant that I had to spend a lot of time with him. Every now and then, he would ask me to go to dinner and to the movies, just like hang out. And before I knew it, I was developing feelings. Let me remind you again that I was 18. I knew that this was really bad. I mean, this was my mom's husband. But there was something about him I really liked. That's when he started opening up to me about how controlling my mom was in the relationship and how he was actually thinking of leaving her. Now, trust me, when he told me this, I was like, oh my god. But that's when I realized that he probably liked me too. I mean, we hung out all the time. And the vibes were there. I knew I had to get away, so I decided to go study abroad. But my stepdad and I kept in touch. He would email me and text me all the time. And before I knew it, we were talking every single day. One day I get a message from him saying that he caught my mom cheating. Now, honestly, this didn't surprise me because that's why my mom's relationship with my dad ended. He asked me to come home and I did. And when I saw him again, I realized that I actually was falling in love with him. Part 2 is that's when I realized that I had fallen in love with my stepdad. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I repeat, this is not my story time. At this point, I was 18 years old. He asked me to come home because he found out that my mom was cheating on him. He asked my mom for the divorce and she said yes. Apparently, my mom was actually going to move in with the guy that she was cheating on my stepdad with, which is a whole other story. My stepdad seemed brokenhearted, but at the same time really relieved. And because of this, we actually started spending more and more time together. Once the dust had settled, I decided to go back to school, which was in another country. And the whole time, my ex-stepdad and I kept in contact. We would talk on the phone almost every single day. Finally, when him and my mom were officially divorced, he actually started changing with me. He started going to the gym and even bought himself a new car. Oh yeah, and he got himself a condo. He started sending me selfies of him in the mirror and showing off his abs and stuff like that. At first, I was like, maybe this is innocent, but then I realized that he was definitely flirting with me. On my 20th birthday, I decided to go home and visit my mom. And yes, I knew that I would be seeing my stepdad. My mom and I had dinner and she told me that my stepdad was actually seeing other women. And this made me extremely jealous. My mom noticed it and asked me if I was upset. I said no, but she kept prying. Finally, I confessed to my own mother that I was in love with her ex-husband. Being the drama queen that my mother is, she instantly started to cry and told me that I was trying to ruin her life. She got up from the table and ran out of the restaurant. After that, my mom did not want to take my phone calls. So instead, I went over to my ex-stepdad's house, and I decided to just come out and tell him everything I felt about him. When I finished talking, he actually smiled and hugged me. He told me to just ignore my mom and that everything was going to be fine. He instantly made me feel so much better. And then he told me that he actually had feelings for me too. I mean, I was so happy, but at the same time, I knew that I couldn't be with him because of my mom. I also mentioned to him that my mom said that he was dating a bunch of other women, and he told me that he had been going out on some dates, but that he only ever thought of me. He then asked me if I wanted to give our relationship a shot. I didn't know what else to say except yes, because I was so happy. Then we became boyfriend and girlfriend secretly, part 3.
Story time, and this is Kasha's story. So when Kasha was 20, she went to go work at her local convenience store in her small town. And because it was a small town, it usually felt safe because she knew most of the people, everyone knew everyone, the people who'd come to shop at the store were usually locals. So even when Kasha would work late at night alone, she felt safe in the store. But this one night when she was about to close, a man that she didn't recognize entered the store and went to the alcohol area and stood there for a while. So Kasha, who was about to close the store, was like, "Sir, come on." So she went up to the man and was like, "Hi, can I help you find something specific?" And the man looks at her and goes, "What do you like to drink?" And Kasha, who's 20 years old, says, "Oh, I'm underage, so I can't help you there. But if you're looking for something specific, I can point it out to you." And the man looks at her and goes, "I think I found what I'm looking for." So that obviously made Kasha feel very uncomfortable. Ooh, I have to do a part 2. I'm sorry. Part 2. So after the man said that to her, Kasha put up her hand and showed off an engagement ring and goes, "Oh, I'm already found," because she just wanted to end that conversation and she knew that saying that would probably close the topic. Keep in mind, Kasha wasn't engaged. She just wore a ring to work because men typically hit on her and she would use that as a way to get them to stop hitting on her. So Kasha then walked back to the register and waited for the man to come up with whatever he wanted to buy. And she grabbed a pepper spray that was by the counter because she started to feel very threatened by this man who was acting shady, to say the least. Eventually, the man came up to the register with a bottle of alcohol, and so she rings him up, and she goes, "I hope you have a good night." And the man looks at her and goes, "I think I will soon enough." And the man then walks out of the store. So Kasha, obviously, is feeling very scared. What did he mean by that? The man goes, sits in his car, and waits in the parking lot. I have to do part 3. Part 3. So the man is in his car in the parking lot, and Kasha is trapped inside the store. I mean, it's 1 a.m. No one's going to come out this time. The store is supposed to be closed, and Kasha usually walks home at night. So clearly she can't do that because the man is in his car waiting. So she was literally stuck inside the store. So she considers her option. One option is sneak out from the back, try to jump a fence. Another option is to call her boyfriend, but those options don't work. So eventually she thinks, okay, I'm going to turn off the lights and I'm going to wait half an hour. And hopefully in that half hour, he'll be gone. So she does that. She waits. The man doesn't leave. So eventually she calls the cops and tells them what's happening, and the cops end up coming and talking to him, and Kasha watches from the window, and the cops end up arresting the guy. Then they come and take a statement from her, and they tell her, this man was just released from jail for sexual assault. So it's a good thing that Kasha called the cops. That's the end of Kasha's story.
Story time about how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So a little background information. I was 16, and I was a sophomore in high school at the time. Well, we're gonna call my boyfriend Alex. And whenever Alex and I first started dating, I would literally brag to all my friends about how nice he was, about how he treated me so good. Well, fast forward a few months, him and I were still dating. And originally my sister scared him. But eventually he had been around long enough to the point where they were super cool. Well, after that I started realizing some off things. For example, the one night he was texting me, and all of a sudden he just stopped responding. And I knew that he didn't fall asleep because he was still texting my sister. Well, that should have been the first red flag, but as we know, I am blind to seeing red flags. Anyways, I didn't want to seem jealous of my sister, so I just decided to play it cool and act normal. But him, on the other hand, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my boyfriend almost ruined my relationship with my sister. So like I said, I decided to act normal and not be jealous. But him, on the other hand, he started finding reasons for him not to like me, and he was ignoring me. Like, he was just being very standoffish. So the one day my sister decides to leave her phone open on the couch when she goes to the bathroom, and I had this fantastic idea to go through her phone. Rightfully so, like, sis, don't be texting my man more than me. That's weird. Well, when I looked, there was nothing. He was just being super nice to her. And with me, on the other hand, his texts were super dry. By the way, my sister and I are twins. But she starts laughing at her phone, and I'm like, what did he say? And they were just typing random letters to each other. She has a better sense of humor than that, so I knew something was off whenever she was laughing at it. And then she says, I have something to tell you, but you have to promise me you won't get mad. And then she tells me that he said that he likes her. Well, after being mad at her for a while, I realized it was his fault. Story time about how I saw my boyfriend propose to another girl in front of me. So a little background information. At the time, my boyfriend and I had been together for around 4 years. We had 2 kids together, and our relationship was pretty rocky. Within the first year of us dating, he would cheat on me all the time, and both times that I was pregnant, he would cheat on me also. Now, after I popped out the second kid, our relationship was going pretty well. And if you're wondering why I didn't leave him when he was cheating on me all the time, well, it was mainly because I grew up in a broken home. And remembering how hard it was on me whenever my parents broke up, I didn't want that for them. Well, over the past few months, my boyfriend had been traveling all over the country with his dad, going to meetings and stuff because he was getting ready to take over half the company. Well, fast forward, it's a Thursday, and my boyfriend has a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of state. And later that night, we were supposed to get on a flight with our friends to go to the Bahamas. Like for part 2. Part 2 about how my boyfriend literally proposed to another girl right in front of me. So like I said, my boyfriend had a meeting with some associates who flew in from out of town. And that night we were supposed to be on a plane to the Bahamas with our friends. So while he was getting ready for this meeting, I went and I dropped the kids off early, and he went to this meeting, and I drove our luggage over to our friend's house because they were just going to drive us to the airport. So my girlfriend and I are super pumped to go on this trip. So we decided to start drinking early, and we went somewhere to get drinks. She suggests this high-end place because the guy at the bar has a crush on her and always gives her free drinks. So we're sitting there having a really good time drinking at the bar. So while we're sitting there, we hear a bunch of clapping and cheering coming from outside. So us being drunk and nosy, we go out there to see what's going on. And what are the chances I walk out there and my boyfriend is down on one knee in front of another girl? And I'm not very confrontational whenever I drink, so I told my best friend to just take me back to her house. When we got back, it was around 6 p.m. And my boyfriend tells me that he's just gonna meet us at the airport like for part 3. Part 3 about how my boyfriend proposed to another girl right in front of me. I know this is late, but better late than never. So like I said, we left, I went back to her house, and my boyfriend has the audacity to text me, I'll just meet you guys at the airport. So my best friend's like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go beat him up? Of course I said no, so I told her and her boyfriend to just go to the airport while I figured out what I was going to do, and to not say a word. Which was hard for my best friend because she was confrontational as fuck. So I texted my boyfriend saying that I was sick and I just wasn't going to go to the Bahamas with them, when in reality I was packing up our whole house, leaving him with only his clothes and his shoes. So I put all the stuff in storage and I just decided to move back to my mom's house. And yes, this was in a span of a few days. So the whole time that he was gone, I was acting like everything was okay. On the last day of the trip, I sent him a text saying that I knew about everything. And I said I never wanted to hear from him again and I never wanted him to see the kids again. And he took that quite literally. I never got a text back. Well, 4 months after all this happened, I soon find out that he got a new house in North Carolina with his new wife and they have a daughter on the way.
Am I wrong for taking my friend to court after she kicked me out of the bridal party for cutting my hair? For my friend's 3-day wedding, I had to buy 3 different dresses, including alterations and specific shoes, which totaled over $700. She also wanted specific hairstyles for each day. Unfortunately, starting in March, my hair started to deteriorate. Due to health reasons, my hair was falling out in chunks, and in May, I made the difficult decision to cut my hair. I told the bride about my decision 2 weeks before the wedding, and she didn't say anything bad. The following week, she came over to my house, and when she was about to leave, she brought up that she was concerned about my haircut, and I told her it would look good even though I wouldn't be in uniform with the other bridesmaids. The following day, I received this message. After our recent conversations, I'd like to remind you of my boundaries. I've been very accommodating and graceful, but I cannot allow you to disrespect me. As you know, my wedding has been something I've dreamt of for many years. My husband and I have invested a lot of money into the video and photos of this day, and as we reflect on this day in the future, we want to see our vision reflected in the memories. Since I asked each of you to be my bridesmaids in 2019, I've been very clearly and very communicative in my request. The timing of your decision to cut your hair and not come in advance is very upsetting to me. I would have felt respected if you had communicated with me more than a week prior to the wedding, so we could have worked together to find a collaborative solution. Your inconsistencies have concerned me, and while I sympathize with your health conditions, I'm not willing to compromise my vision to accommodate you, or anyone else, when you have informed me in advance and we could have found a better solution. Since this is something you can no longer fully commit to, I need you to please step down from participating in my wedding. This was 3 days before the wedding. I immediately sent her and her husband an invoice asking them to reimburse for the dresses and shoes, keeping in mind that one of the dresses is still in her possession even though I paid for it. I was told I was inconsistent and selfish after I spent the past 2 weeks helping her plan the wedding shower. I worked with another bridesmaid to surprise her with a bridal shower after our bachelorette trip had to be canceled. I spent hours helping her out with wedding details. When she asked me to help her tone up before the wedding, I sent her a personalized workout program and even went with her to the gym to show her the ropes. When I agreed to be her bridesmaid, I was more than willing to oblige with what she asked, even if at times it was a lot of time and money. So, am I wrong for taking her to court because she kicked me out for cutting my hair?